In a world where it seems totally normal to listen to a podcast about the Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos pregame walkthrough brought to you by Funny Bone Broth. My name is Ben Grant, joined as always by JB. A lot of things to get into on this short week as the Toronto Argonauts get prepared to face the Ottawa REDBLACKS for the second time and maybe get some revenge. We're going to talk about the Elks signing yet another Argos defensive player in Jeff Richards. We're going to talk a little bit about Garrett Marino because I've received a few messages with people asking, should the Argos sign him? The short answer is no. We'll talk about why. Plus, the Argos have a couple of new signings that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet. We'll get into those. Plus, we will preview the Ottawa game, go through the injury reports, give you OCDC one thing, predictions, fantasy advice, and our CFL picks. All that and more coming up on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. How many more former Argos players are available for Chris Jones to take, JB?
Well, I don't know what is going on in Edmonton. They are all over the map. I mean, he clearly wants guys who know his system, but the guys that are available are not particularly good, so that doesn't outweigh how much they know his system. So I'm not sure what Coach Jones is doing in Edmonton. I thought they were going to be much better, but it's just a 18-wheel truck careening down the highway at this moment.
They've got good minutes from some guys. Like, actually, Tristan Decu's playing pretty well, honestly. And like Martez,
I liked him though. I really liked him. I thought he just got squeezed out of a great backfield. I really liked him last year.
Yeah, I like Deku as well. I still like him as a corner, but I know he's really just played halfback, and that's sort of considered to be a level up in CFL circles. But yeah, he's actually got some pretty good minutes. He's played fairly well. He's had a couple of unfortunately highlight reel problems. But so has the rest of Edmonton.
Yeah, he had that here too.
Yes, that's true. And then they've also, this is offense, but they've got pretty good minutes out of Martez Ivey. He's not playing particularly well, but he is their starting left tackle, which is sort of unbelievable in a way. And
it's like Frankenstein's monster out there.
I know.
They have like an arm from this and a leg from that, and you're like, what is this?
And I think a lot of it with Coach Jones is not so much, I don't think it's that much like system. I know that's important. I think he's bringing a lot of these guys in because of that. But I think it's like knowing what they're getting into. I think that's a big part of it with him because he is a slightly different style of coach. Not an unusual style of coach. You find a lot of guys wired exactly like Chris Jones, but just not everyone is like that. And it takes a certain type of player. Like players either love him or hate him, but he's very polarizing for everybody. Fans feel that way. Opposing teams feel that way, and his own players feel that way. So I think he likes to bring in some of these former Toronto guys because they know what kind of coach he is, and if they're happy to go there, then we've like solved what is maybe one of the bigger problems he's got.
It's an interesting dilemma for hiring a coach because I do think there are coaches for certain teams, right? Like there are coaches that are great with building a team up and creating an environment and sort of bringing everyone together. I think Coach O'Shea is brilliant at that. And then you have coaches that maybe are not as good at that. I think Coach Jones is more about a team that has talent but needs a kick in the butt, as opposed to a team that doesn't have that much talent and you're just trying to scrape it together. It's a different skill set being that type of coach. I think both are important, but I think Coach Jones is more about, taking advantage of unused potential more than, okay, well, let's teach the basics of football to this ragtag group and try and put it together. That doesn't strike me as Coach Jones at all.
We were talking about this a little bit at Argos practice, just in observing Coach Dinwiddie's style at practice, which is very different from most, I was going to say CFL coaches, but just head coaches in general. Coach Dinwiddie for the most part, is invisible is the wrong word, because I don't mean this. I mean this actually as a positive comment. And if I say invisible, there's like a negative connotation to that. But if you watch Argos practice, it's actually hard to tell who the head coach is. There's no one that jumps out. You would never say, well, that guy's obviously the head coach. There's nobody that you would say that about until the end when they gather together, and then Coach Dinwiddie sort of addresses everybody. But I really like that style because that's to me what a head coach should be, where he's walking around, he's observing. He'll let the special teams coach do his thing. He'll let the quarterbacks coach do this and work on this. He'll let the offensive line coach work on this and do this. And he's just sort of got his hand in everything. He's calling plays and running things for the offense when they get into 12s and system stuff. But yeah, I kind of like his approach, but that works for a veteran team, a team of experienced guys like Enoch Mwamba and Wynton McManus and McLeod Bethel-Thompson, guys that don't need to be shown how to practice as a professional. And so his style works, but I wonder if that's his natural style or if he's adapted that because in his only 2 years as a head coach, he's had a ton of veterans. So it's interesting, but that contrasts very much because you watch practice from last year. Once Coach Jones arrived, you would kind of think Coach Jones was the head coach in Toronto, not because he was running things, but just because he was the easiest voice to hear on a group that had some loud voices last year.
I am not advocating, but 100%, the Argos are a much better fit for Coach Jones than Edmonton. I know Edmonton was the job that was available, but this Argos team is the type of team Coach Jones, I think, is built to coach and not, the Bad News Bears.
Yeah, and I think that's partly why they're struggling and why there's been so much turnover, because he's had to get rid of so many guys where he's like, well, this guy can't do what I want him to do. And he needs veteran players, and they've just got, some veterans, but it's so many young guys in there. So it's not the ideal situation for him. But I think Coach Dinwiddie also has shown that he works really well with veteran players, because he kind of allows players to, not to dictate things, like it's certainly his practice plan. He's running practice. But players are accountable for their own effort, he's not there screaming and hollering at guys and look at me, I'm the coach, do what I say. And there's so many football coaches like that. That's not him.
And look, he is not a soft-spoken, shy guy.
Right.
Like there is no doubt he has that gear in him. He is an intense guy. So this is not a guy who's afraid to do that. So it's clearly like an intellectual, strategic choice, which I think credit to him.
And he'll allow the fun to go on too. Like we were at practice the other day, and it seemed to be, we don't know exactly on this. I want to get confirmation on exactly what was happening. We were trying to figure it out, but it looked very much like the team huddled around a Haggerty versus Haggerty dance-off between Josh and John Haggerty. We need to get confirmation on exactly what was happening there, but they both seemed to take a turn dancing at the end of practice, and everybody cheered and loved it. But like things like that, I can't imagine that happening with Coach Jones in charge. So there are some differences there too, where Coach Dinwiddie will let the players have fun and enjoy themselves, but when it's time to work, we work, and his record speaks for itself. He's been successful.
I mean, this is kind of an offshoot conversation, but definitely I have always been impressed with his coaching plan. Clearly the coaching staff works together because they're all on the same page. They're not looking for somebody to yell out what's next. They know the plan in and out. There's no wasted time. There's nobody on the field playing grab ass or whatever, fooling around, pretending to be they are 100%, which, look, I know it's professional football, but definitely that is not how every professional team would practice. And, I've always been very impressed with the pace and the speed and the energy of the practices I've watched.
Yeah, for sure. So that's and just getting back to our original point with Jeff Richards, and we'll move on from this topic, but Jeff Richards is he can still play. We saw it at the end of last year. I was really surprised to see that he was available, because he contributed in a very positive fashion last year. And so bringing him in, he obviously knows what Coach Jones is all about. Coach Jones knows him well. I expect that will go pretty well.
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, there's only up in Edmonton.
Yeah, that's right. It's not like we're going to be able to tell if it doesn't.
No, it's perfect.
Let's talk about Garrett Marino. He was released by the Saskatchewan Roughriders after yet another questionable hit, and I've read excuses made on his behalf for this hit. There's no way. There's just nothing. Like I fully get the idea of if you don't know who has the ball and there's play action or misdirection, then you have to hit everybody involved. That's not what this was. It's very clear that the ball was gone, and he clearly made a conscious decision to throw Collaros to the ground. And luckily, Collaros didn't seem to be hurt long term from that. But yeah, that was pretty brutal. And essentially, Saskatchewan had no choice but to let him go. I do not think any team is going to pick him up, and I don't think the Argos should pick him up. I don't think anyone should pick him up because not only like football aside, if anyone picks them up, their fan base, a lot of their fan base is going to turn against them. Not only because the fans are disgusted by what they've seen from the play and the just the trying to injure people is the issue, but so many quarterbacks on almost every team have spoken out against him and in support of the players who have been injured. Mazzoli obviously at the top of that list. So there's no team right now that can bring him in, and I don't think anyone wants that headache.
Well, I can think of one team that might bring him in,
but they won't, though. And you're thinking Edmonton, and a lot of people said, "Well, Coach Jones on line one, etc." But
yeah, definitely, he is signing in Edmonton. There is no chance Coach Jones doesn't add him to whatever nonsense he's running out there.
The reason it won't happen is because of Victor. Like running that show, he oversees everything, and there's no chance in my mind. Just the kind of guy that he is and the way he's presented himself. And Edmonton's not a market that can afford to alienate any more fans. They are, they have gone from being a jam-packed stadium and the pride of Alberta to looking like a Toronto Argonauts crowd in a stadium that seats like 3 times as many as BMO Field. It's a bad scene over there. And signing a guy that at least half of the fans are going to be very disturbed by, and other players that are on that team are going to be like, I don't know, like I've spoken out against this guy. I just don't think you can. I don't expect any CFL team to bring him in. And Commissioner Ambrosi today releasing a statement reminding teams of what their obligations are and aren't. This was sort of, to me, it read like a coded message of nobody sign Marino, please. And so I think that is it. And so to answer those questions, no, the Argonauts should not bring in Garrett Marino.
It's bad karma, and I'm a big believer in that. And the league needs quarterbacks. Guys can go after quarterbacks. Guys can hit quarterbacks. But the league needs quarterbacks. If you don't have a quarterback, the game is almost unwatchable. And he just does not play respectfully. You can play physically violently. Look at Wynton McManus. He will crush people, but he is not playing disrespectfully. And he's not dirty. And you just cannot be dirty around quarterbacks. They are too important. And if this guy can't, after suspension and whatever else, he still is wired that way, like some kind of movie villain from the program. I agree. You just can't have that in your league. You can't have guys who disrespect the game that way, because the defensive line is there to hit the quarterback. They are not there to hurt the quarterback. That is idiotic, prehistoric thinking. So I'm glad he's out and should stay out for the good of the league.
The Toronto Argonauts have signed 2 new players. You had a chance to take a look at them both and do a bit of a write-up. So running back Stone Cofield, who has some Argo ties, and probably who's going to be a defensive end, Ali Fayed, who I guess played as a sort of like an edge rusher, linebacker, tweener, but I think in the CFL he's pretty clearly going to be a defensive end. What can you tell us about these 2 guys? Let's start with the running back, Adam Cofield. What do you see on him?
Yeah, I mean, I think they need to, we've been talking about, they definitely need more depth at running back, just to practice, just be able to run drills. You're going to need 3 or 4 running backs. You can't have one guy running drills. So I would imagine there's probably another running back to be signed as well, if only for practice. He played mainly the level below Div 1, and then he played 1 season Div 1. He had pretty good stats. Western Kentucky was a pretty good squad and had Bailey Zappi, who was drafted into the NFL. So, they were a program that was creating talent. His measurements are not overwhelming, like in terms of his 40 is only 4.7, and he's not, he's not particularly strong or particularly big, but he certainly, all signs seem to be that he's highly intelligent, great at pass blocking, picking up the blitz, somebody who can maybe give you 8 to 10 carries to give Olette a breather. So he's in the mix, but I'd be surprised if he played, to be honest, in the game. It feels more like a program pick to have at practice. But I do think the defensive end is somebody who could really be special. His measurables are much better, kind of jump off at you. He is a pure pass rusher. I think he played in a 4-3 outside rush, and that's what he's there for. If you brought him in to give you that, as kind of a backup to Ray, who, is going to give you, you just need 2 or 3 great rushes. You don't need to rush all game, but in that third quarter, fourth quarter, you come off the bench and you have a step that they're not ready for. I think he could potentially be that. I think that, he got a little bit of time with the Eagles, and they have a very good defensive line, so it's not surprising he wasn't able to crack that. But he was MAC Defensive Player of the Year. MAC's pretty good conference. His film looks good. Like he looks good. He looks like he could be a real weapon. So I'm excited about that signing.
Especially the way that Barlow's been playing. That positional group is suddenly a real strength. Not that it ever wasn't really this season, but it's going to be a pretty competitive group.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have a lot of guys like Ray, right? They don't have a lot of pure speed rushers. So I think he brings something that they don't have in abundance. So I am excited to see how that first step translates to the CFL.
Is this game against Ottawa as big as these past 2 games have been against Hamilton? And the reason I'm asking this is because I feel like these last 2 games against Hamilton, you lose one of these and the season changes entirely. The Argos were able to win the last 2, and now they're somewhat comfortable out in front. Does that make this less of a crucial game, or is there a fear now that maybe Ottawa with a win would be right back in the mix too, and now there's one extra team to worry about?
It's a very weird quirk in the schedule because they play Ottawa, and then both teams have a bye, and then they play Ottawa again, and both games are in Ottawa, so it's an away and away. Like who designed that?
Yeah, well, it's not like it's the first quirk in the schedule of this season.
No, I don't think so. Obviously, it's nice to win every game, and that's a danger. It's a short week. Obviously coming down from the high of winning on Labor Day and being on the cover of the Sun and the sports section and all of that. There was never a game set up more to be a trap game, but I can't believe that they don't have the bad taste in their mouth of losing to Ottawa to keep them focused. But if they don't win, I don't think it's a huge game.
Yeah, the one nice thing about this, because I would see this as a game I was very concerned about, because Ottawa played pretty well last week. They looked like a much different team last week. They put up a ton of points. And to be able to do that, not like Montreal's defense isn't good, but 38 points is a lot of points. Arbuckle was walking them up and down the field. The defense has been good all year. The thing that makes me more comfortable is that just knowing the way that game prep works and film study works, that one of the most important pieces of film when the offense especially gets to studying, obviously they're going to be looking at the Montreal game last week, but they're also going to be looking at their own matchup. Well, what did they do against us last time? And they're just going to be reminded again and again all week as to how Ottawa took them to the cleaners and how embarrassing that was at home to lose against what was then a winless Ottawa team. So even though it's coming off a huge Labor Day win, this would typically be a trap game. It's really not because of that. Now, had Ottawa lost in the first game at BMO, then I would be really nervous coming into this one. But I just don't think anyone's taking this lightly.
No, and like from a conference point of view, it definitely would be great to win. But Montreal's probably going to lose to BC. Hamilton's probably going to lose to Winnipeg. Ottawa has a lot of ground to make up. They just have to split this Ottawa series to keep a pace of their lead.
Yeah, I just think they're both winnable games. And as much as I do like revenge games typically, I love the revenge game, and we'll get into that a little bit when we get to our fantasy picks for this week. I just don't think, even with a revenge game, I just feel like this is Arbuckle obviously is going to, absolutely want to destroy the Argonauts. Anybody would, even if it weren't just in the interest of your own career. It's just, how it works, how human beings are wired. But there's nobody in the CFL that knows Arbuckle as well as Coach Dinwiddie. And that's the good and the bad. And I feel like if any team can get ready for Nick Arbuckle, it's a team head coached by Coach Dinwiddie. So that part of it too makes me feel just a little bit more comfortable. Let's get into the injury situation. So the REDBLACKS are a day ahead basically on the schedule with an extra rest day in there. They're a day ahead in terms of practicing. So we have a much better idea as to what they're going to put out there compared to what Toronto's going to put out there. It's a very healthy looking Ottawa REDBLACKS team. I was thinking for a little while that Darvin Adams may not go. He did get the day off Tuesday for an ankle injury, but that seemed to just be exactly that, a veteran day off, and he's back to full practice today. The only guy that didn't practice full today was Sherrod Baltimore, who also missed last week's game against Montreal. Sherrod Baltimore is a corner I like a lot. He's been playing field corner for Baltimore for several years now, and he's been a bright spot on what otherwise has been a pretty terrible team for the most part. But his play I do like, and I think there are some opportunities there. I don't expect him, with a hamstring injury, missing last week, having a couple days already into this week with no practices. I don't think he's going to go. But Lorenzo Malden is back to practicing full. Ucambre Williams is practicing full. Everyone else that's on their injury report, I think, is going to go. For Toronto, it's not quite as positive. There are some concerns. We didn't get a practice from Joe Carbone, but Declan Cross was out there actually getting some work in, limited. But that makes me think, just the fact that he's out there testing out that ankle makes me think that we're going to see Declan Cross this week. And so the Argos can finally dress a fullback. Now, that said, they haven't dressed a fullback in 2 games, and they're 2-0 without fullbacks. But you just can't sustain that. It's ridiculous to go out there with 2 total guys in the backfield. So I would love to see Declan Cross back. He's such a good special teamer as well. Going down the list, Justin Lawrence that's a bit of a red flag when you see any offensive lineman on the list. But this is the knee injury that he sustained in the first quarter. Actually, on that first touchdown pass to Markeith Ambrose, Justin Lawrence was injured, and it looked really bad. The way that they were looking at him, I thought, well, that's it. Justin Lawrence he's going to be out for at least this game, if not longer. And lo and behold, he was back on the field on the Argos' very next possession. So I think this is the same injury we're talking about here. I think it's really going to bother him. It's obviously, it's an injury. It's serious, but I think he's going to be able to play. So he's limited today. He might be limited all week, but I think he's going to give it a go come game day. And guys that aren't, though, I don't think we're going to see Javon Leake. He didn't practice today with the hamstring injury. Robert Priester, still not practicing. I kind of feel like he should have been put on the 6th game at this point. And, otherwise, I think we're going to pretty much get everybody, everybody that played last week, I think is going to play again. Just, I did get a couple questions on what's the difference between the 6 game and the 1 game. Like, what does it matter? If you're on the 6 game injury list, your salary does not count against the salary cap. So if you can put a guy on the 6 game injury list, it's better if you do that. If you don't put them on the 6 game injury list, then it means quite seriously that you think they're going to be injured for far less time than that. And so with guys like Declan Cross and Joe Carbone and Javon Leake, Robert Priester, these guys not being on the 6 game injury list suggests that they should be coming back soon. And those fullbacks, we've been without for a few games now. So you would expect at least Declan Cross to play this week. But it does make you wonder, did they maybe miscalculate something with Robert Priester if he's not going to be able to go again this week? All right, JB, it is time for your favorite segment of the show, OCDC. Let's start it up with you, JB. You are the defensive coordinator for the Ottawa REDBLACKS. How are you stopping this machine that is the Toronto Argonauts offense?
I'm going to play tight man coverage. I'm going to cover Ouellette coming out of the backfield. No easy passes, no easy checkdowns. I'm looking to challenge McLeod to throw the ball deep. Want to take away the middle of the field. Want to take away the seam and keep him off balance, because he is a quarterback who can really do damage when he is feeling a rhythm. I'm not worried about the running game again. I'm coming out with the DB heavy defensive lineup. I think that with Ouellette, you can take care of that with your line and your backers. I'm definitely trying to crowd the hash marks and really look to push up the middle against McLeod, because he tends to sky it a little when he can't step into the ball, and a lot of his interceptions are not bad reads per se, but he just puts a little too much air under the ball, and it's either tipped or it goes over the receiver. So I'm hoping to get that from McLeod to really kind of push the middle of that pocket and not let him step into the ball.
So you don't think you would go with just the same plan that, because remember, Ottawa's the one that came up with the formula for how to slow down the Argonauts. They were the first team this year.
I think parts of it for sure. I think the tight man, definitely. Ottawa's got a pretty good defensive line, especially if Malden is 100%. But any team is gonna, Toronto will be watching film all week, so your exact same game plan is not going to work. But I think the tenet of it is still there, that you're looking man coverage, you're looking to take that away, but also I'm going to mix in some zone and challenge that middle of the field and really see if he can hit the deep out. If you can hit the deep out, which he can, but it's a low percentage play, and that's what I'm counting on.
On the offensive side of the ball for the Ottawa REDBLACKS, my game is going to be pretty simple, and that's trying to go off of all of Nick Arbuckle's tendencies. He's got some very clear tendencies, like we documented last season. He loves to throw to the right, does not love to throw to the left so much. I want to try and reverse all this. They've got to work this week because they have to know that everything is going to be shaded to the right, that they're looking for that they're trying to take that stuff away. I also think the Argos are going to be anticipating a lot of stuff underneath. Arbuckle he likes to throw short. There's a lot of stuff that happens behind the line of scrimmage. He doesn't really go downfield a lot. Now, funny enough, the game against Montreal last week, he was doing some stuff that we haven't really seen him do before. But I think ultimately against a better defense, which the Argonauts clearly are, you are going to have to go back to the things you do well. But I think you have to avoid some of the tendencies that you've set. So I would really fool around with formation. I would like to, assuming Darvin Adams can go, which I think he's going to be able to, I'd like to get him as much as I can on the left side and combine he and Acklin, which you don't really see them do a lot. They've got Acklin playing X. Darvin Adams has been playing the Y spot, but you can motion anyone around. Lapalisse can put those guys wherever they want to. And I would love to pair Adams and Acklin on the left side. And I think that's really going to catch Toronto off guard. And I think whatever plan Coach Mace has coming into this game is probably going to be thwarted a little bit by having I would think your two best receivers on the left side, where you're not really thinking a lot of action is going to happen. So that's one. And I've been preaching this a lot this year, and I haven't got it a lot. I think in the run game, I would really work draw plays. You see it time and time again with CFL teams where the linebackers will take their read steps and then really bail out. And we saw that last week. Like, Wyndon McManus played a great game, but the reason he was able to tip both of those passes that were intercepted by Jamal Peters is because he was bailing out really early. And linebackers typically do, because you don't see a lot of draw plays in the CFL. So that's something that I would bring in as the Ottawa offensive coordinator. All right, moving to the good guys, JB, what is your defensive game plan for the Toronto Argonauts?
Well, I think we're just going to line up on the right and see what happens. Look, Arbuckle is a good quarterback when he is feeling it. That's why they traded for him. He showed that against Montreal. He reminds me of Dane Evans. He is not somebody to overlook. But in that Montreal game, his passing percentage was still, like 65. He can be rattled. You can get to him with blitzes. I'm daring him to throw the ball deep. He wants to throw seams. He wants to throw posts. He is not looking to challenge you down the field as much. I'm gonna play when we're zoned. We're gonna crash that underneath stuff. We're gonna I'd love to have man coverage on Acklin and then safety help over the top, or even robber help on Acklin. I would double Acklin. And from a defensive point of view, I'm bringing more heat than I have. I know the Argos have not brought a lot of heat and have not been a sack-heavy team. But if ever they were going to empty the book, this would be it for me. I would throw everything they have at them. I don't think they're expecting a big pass rush. You have to be smart, because he'll run. You can't get downfield. You can't get past the quarterback. You got to maintain your edges. But I'm linebacker blitzing, secondary blitzing. I think this is a week to bring a lot of heat, especially when you didn't against Hamilton, and that looks to be something that you don't really believe in. I want, because if he's comfortable, he can pick you apart. I mean, I think he is a quarterback with limits on him, but he can be a problem if he starts feeling it and you give him time to pick his targets, because he'll hit them. He can be a starting quarterback in this league. So I want to rush him, want to get on top of him, want to crowd that middle of the field, and if he can throw a 40-yard bomb, so be it. And if he's going to roll out, he's not going to roll out right. That right, you've got to make sure if he's rolling out to the left.
In terms of the Argonauts offense, my plan this week, it sounds like desperation, but I really think where Ottawa is most vulnerable is go routes along the sideline. I think you can pick on these corners. With Baltimore down, I don't love their cornerbacks. I think Ottawa's defense is really good. I think their defensive line is excellent. I think it's going to be really hard to run the ball, and I think you're going to have to pass first. And I really think deep shots are the way, and you don't have to hit every single one, but they need to score on a couple of these. I would really go downfield early. And I think Coxie and Bethel Thompson have started to develop a little bit of a rapport. I wouldn't mind seeing go routes from Daniels too. I know I keep trying to get him on the outside. You got to find a way to get him, somehow get him out there or isolate him in your quad set. He's really good at back shoulders. He's not great at just flying off the line. That's not really his style of game. But he's great at that back shoulder pass, and that's something that we haven't really seen them do too much this season. So I would see some of those deep shots. I also think this is a great time to bring out double moves. They didn't run any, I don't think, in the last game against Ottawa. They did run a lot of short stuff. Some of that was because they were sort of forced into it because of the amount of pressure that Ottawa was generating. But if they can get time, if they can find a way to slow down, well, Malden's a problem, but Lang has been a huge problem too. If they can slow down these guys and they have enough time for double moves, I really want to see that. And I think once that starts opening things up, once that defensive line also gets a little bit more tired, now is when you can start running. I do think their linebackers can be taken advantage of a little bit. They're good, but it's the defensive line that's the issue. So I think you got to exhaust them. Pass rush, pass rush, pass rush. Don't get home. Bombs all day long, double moves, and then you start pounding them with the running game once everyone's tired out a little bit. That's my plan.
Yeah, I like it. What I'm not saying, no game is a game you can just give up. But if ever there were one, heading into a bye week, if ever there were a time to take out of the garage a couple things and to put it on film and to see, hey, can we do this? This is a thing we're not very good at. Can we do it? This is the game. You go into this game, you get a week off, then you play Ottawa again in Ottawa. I would be as experimental as you could possibly be in a game that you're still hoping to win heading into the bye. I think you want to look at what you haven't done, what you haven't really been able to do, what you would like to be able to do, and really get some good film on why you're not able to do it. I think because I don't think it's a huge deal if you lose the game. Of course, you want to win every game, but if ever there were time for tape to really get a sense of what's working and what's not, this is the one. So I expect to see a lot of, or not expect, I'd love to see a lot of different looks from the offense and from the defense.
My one thing this week is a difficult one. I want to see the Argonauts have a better return yard average on punts than Ottawa. That is a lot to ask because I'm asking for two different units to really achieve beyond all expectations. Ottawa is so good at return blocking. And I think for listeners, I really encourage you to watch on punts, especially kickoffs too, but watch on punts the difference between what we've been seeing, the football you've been watching all year, where the Argos punt returner catches the ball, looks up, and there are three guys standing there perfectly fanned out waiting to tackle him 2 or 3 yards later. And then compare that to what you see Ottawa do, where whoever it is back there catches the ball and there's like 15 yards of space in front of him and a side that's like got nobody on it. It's just so different. And the thing is, with the lack of running backs that the Argos have been dressing, they've been able to field such strong special teamers. They have so many guys that last game especially that were dressed that are really pure special teams guys. Like, we're not just talking about like Hadel in the return team, but guys like Josh Haggerty and like Kassar and Adeboboye has turned into a really nice special teams contributor. They've got so many great gunners, guys that get downfield, but they haven't been able to show it on the other side of the ball in creating some space, some room for punt returners. So that's the goal this week. If the Argonauts can end up with better punt return average than Ottawa, they win this game. That's my one thing.
Yeah, all right. I'm running out of one things, to be honest, because the Argos have been very good at achieving every one thing I've asked for. So that's really been fun to watch. If my one thing going along with my kitchen sink strategy for putting on film, I want to see 4 sacks. The Argos are still in the bottom of the league for team sacks. I want to see 4 sacks from the defense.
That's too many sacks. That's not going to happen. They just don't send, like, I know in your game plan that might...
Exactly. They don't, but they will.
Okay, we'll see. Well, that's a pretty bold one thing, and they're going to have to send pressure to do that. And I just don't know if I see them doing that in back-to-back games. But like you said in your OCDC segment, it makes sense to. So maybe. I think Toronto wins this game. I think it's going to be super tight, and I don't think it's going to be a particularly high-scoring one. I think the Argonauts win 20-18. How do you see this one finishing?
Part of me is worried about letdown, short week. It's an ask. Ottawa is feeling good. They probably are feeling the best that they have. They've already beaten us once. They are going to come out and play very confident ball. But Ottawa at home is terrible. And it will take a bad first quarter to turn that Ottawa crowd into, much like the Hamilton crowd, voracious hyenas who are looking to tear apart their team. So I think Toronto's going to come out and have a good first quarter, and I see them winning the game 24-14.
Toronto having a good first quarter is a pretty bold prediction in itself this season. So, yeah, I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, I mean, Ottawa just can't play it like Edmonton. They just are terrible at home. So I'm gonna bank on that.
It's time for our world famous fantasy advice. Ooh, we struggled this week. We came away with a win in our league, but only just barely. And second week in a row.
I think dynastic is the only word for our team.
Yeah, our record is good, but our points scored these last 2 weeks. We need a bounce back. So apologies if we're letting down your fantasy team. We think we've got a pretty good one this week. Although our strategy revolved around who we had at quarterback. And this was tough. We've ended up fielding Nick Arbuckle at quarterback, and we had some psychological issues with this, some emotional issues with this. We had McLeod Bethel-Thompson at one point as our quarterback, but he's like $2,000 more. And who else did we go with there at one point? I think we looked at Vernon Adams, but even he's over $1,000 more than Nick Arbuckle, and you don't even know for sure like how that's going to look. He's been in that offense for 2 weeks. I know he's got all those weapons. Look, if you want to go that way, if you have trouble putting Red Blacks on your team, I totally get it. Then I would recommend Vernon Adams if he's going to get the start, and I think he's at least going to. I do think he's going to be playing the majority of the snaps. And if not there, then I think you can go with McLeod Bethel-Thompson. I think his numbers are going to be decent, but you're paying a lot more for it. Now, what Nick Arbuckle allowed us to do is we could load up with one outstanding running back and one outstanding receiver. So our outstanding running back, Kadeem Carey, who did really well for us last week, and we're going to pair him with Frankie Hickson, who, again, for a $4,000 player is a fantastic deal. Kadeem Carey, you're paying over $9,000 for, but that's what having Nick Arbuckle allows us to sort of splurge on. In terms of receivers, Brian Burnham, $8,400. That is a big cost. But again, I think BC might have a big game in Montreal, and he's a weapon. And then we got to save a bit of money with our second receiver, DeMonte Coxie, who for $2,500 is a steal. He continues to be. He's not putting up massive numbers, and he's not going to this week as well. But he's good for like 8 to 12 points, and I think when you're spending the minimum salary on that's great. And then we can splurge a little bit with our flex. Darrell Walker for under $5,000. He comes in at $4,985. Lawler's out for Edmonton. He is the guy, and we saw that last week in Calgary where it just looked like every pass was targeting Darrell Walker because Cornelius just didn't have that many options. So I think that's pretty good value. And then we splurge a little bit with defense. We're going with the Toronto Argonauts. Just to kind of fly in the face of our quarterback pick, Nick Arbuckle, the Argonauts, 3,862. That's our fantasy team. I feel okay about it. I think.
Yeah, look, we went to the store, and ground beef was 1/4 the price, and so we bought 5 pounds.
On to our picks. You had a pretty good week last week, JB. Look at you, 3-1 last week.
I called it moving week, and it was.
Yeah, I was 2-2, 3-1 for you. So you gained a little bit of ground. Let's put the pressure on you first this week. BC at Montreal. Are you a believer in the BC Lions with Vernon Adams potentially at the helm?
Yeah, I was on board with Montreal seeming impenetrable fortress, but then Ottawa blew the doors off them, so I don't think that's a thing anymore. I like BC for sure to come in and revenge game. Pretty healthy Lions. This is their season. Not on the line, but I mean, the question everybody wants to know is like, is this team now done? I think those guys feel a lot of pride and don't want the feeling of, well, Rourke is gone, so let's just flush the team down. So I like BC to win this.
I'm also going BC. I am the believer in revenge games. And yeah, this is the perfect one for Vernon Adams. And just knowing, like, I'm actually excited to listen to some of the Montreal podcast after this game if BC does win, because it's so entertaining. And not to, like, I don't wish anything bad for the flight deck guys. Those guys are awesome. I love listening to their podcast. But I just know the way that's going to start off, if somehow Vernon Adams comes in there and tears them apart, that's going to be entertaining listening for sure. So yeah, I've got BC. The Toronto-Ottawa game, we've both picked Toronto. Saskatchewan at Winnipeg. Where are you going to go with this one? I had this wrong last week. I picked Saskatchewan. I feel like I was burned a little bit. Are you going with Winnipeg again?
Winnipeg is that team that makes you want to punch, yourself in the face and then punch the wall if you're an opposing team. Ask Calgary.
Yeah, they know.
They just play perfect football, and they demand it of you. And can you do it for 4 quarters? Can you not make a bad coaching decision? Can you not fumble? Can you not make a mistake? And that's what they demand of teams, and nobody's up for it. I know Saskatchewan wants to win this game so badly, but so did Calgary, and they still lost. I think Winnipeg wins again at home, and Saskatchewan punches the walls of their airplane.
Yeah, I'm done picking against Winnipeg again for the second time this year. I've said that. They just, like you said, they don't make mistakes. And Saskatchewan played pretty mistake-free last week, but then suddenly Duke Williams gets a bench penalty late in the game, and which could have been the winning field goal for them. Instead, it's a bench penalty. Winnipeg doesn't make the mistake. They win the game. So, yeah, I'm picking Winnipeg. And then Calgary-Edmonton. This just goes with one of my rules, which is do not pick Edmonton when they're at home. And so, yeah, this is sort of picked for me. I'm taking Calgary. What about you?
Yeah, this would be a huge upset. Edmonton at home to beat Calgary. I mean, part of me wants to pick it because this could be their Super Bowl. This one game could redeem their whole season. They're at home. Calgary is definitely looking past that game. They beat the brakes off them last week. They're not a very good team. Calgary has the Lions coming up. Tough to beat a team 2 weeks in a row. I'm taking your Elks of Edmonton.
Excellent. Well, that's going to be our only different pick of the week. I'm excited that you have taken the Edmonton Elks at home, because then I don't have to, and I can increase my lead.
No, this is it. I feel it. This is put your money, take it out of your RSPs, put it down on the Elks.
Do not do any of those things, please, listener. Well, that would just about do it for us on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. Hope you enjoy the game Saturday. It's a Saturday CFL triple header. Don't forget, it's an early kickoff, 2 p.m. start. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.